Really happy to be here with Andrea. And we started this conversation because Andrea is a coordinator of a community, online community of sensitive entrepreneurs. And so, we started talking about this idea of how do we deal with change, personal change, difficult times, particularly as solopreneurs, as sensitives, particularly. And Andrea has so much experience with that I thought, let's have a conversation. I think this will be helpful for lots of folks in my audience. So, Andrea, thank you for being here. I know you recently have gone through the loss of a loved one. And so you are very much in this space right now, talking as we talk about this. So I would love for you to introduce yourself and share what's been going on recently, and then let's get into the conversation.
Okay, thank you so much, George, for being welcoming. And I just wanted to say thank you very much to you for all your heartfelt support and encouragement over these last few months in particular has been quite difficult. So before I give a little bit of background on that, I'll introduce myself in work terms. So as you mentioned, I'm the business group and events coordinator for the Sensitive Empowerment Community. And that's an online community that offers a positive alternative to social media for sensitive people. It's very nurturing and a very supportive space, very much based on inclusion and connection. And there's wonderful posts and articles, lots of resources, and of course, all of our events that I help produce and create. And from my own perspective, from my own work, I have my own online business where I help environmentally sensitive people with their day-to-day sensitivity management. So that's me in terms of work. But what has been happening significantly in my own personal story very recently is the passing of my dad. So it has been a very difficult time. It's been a very sad time. And not just in these last couple of months since that happened, but obviously leading up to that as well. So a large part of this year has been spent with that significant personal change. And it's really made me realise that not only from a personal perspective, but very much so for people who are working for and by themselves, there can be a significant impact there as well. And that's what I'm trying to work through at the moment. So I thought this would be a relevant topic, George, and I thank you very much for your sensitivity and support along the
Yeah.
way as well. That's been good.
Well, I think a lot of folks watching this, listening to this can relate because um, many of us have lost close loved ones, and how do we continue building our business? Or it's not just that, because what we're talking about here, personal change affects, I mean, it applies to, maybe medical issues or other reasons why that take us out of our usual business rhythm. And so I'm curious, as you have reflected on this and you're going through it yourself, um, yeah, what encouragement, I guess maybe we'll start there. What encouragement are you giving yourself as you continue? Because I'm assuming, are you continuing to see clients, to welcome clients? How is that side of things going for you?
Okay, well, there's a couple of things there, George. As I mentioned, I've got my own business and my work for the community. And I have found that my work for the community has been easier to maintain and keep some consistency there. And that's probably because I'm working on somebody else's platform. I'm working with a team of people. So it isn't just me. And as I said, it's a very nurturing and very supportive space. So I really would be quite lost without that at the moment. So I'm very grateful for everybody on the community. And I'm grateful to my own audience as well, because they have been very supportive and very understanding. That's where I feel things have lapsed quite a bit. And I don't mind saying that, George, to you here, because I'm just being very honest. The consistency in content creation, in communications, just it hasn't been there for a number of reasons. And I think the more familiar your audience is with you and your work, the more understanding they will be of that. But it's certainly not ideally where it needs to be. So that's where I'm finding some some issues there that I'm really trying to get back on track step by step with my own online business.
Yeah, it's I mean the energy is so different when you're going through this kind of a personal transition, personal change. And I always say our content, when it's authentic, it arises from our energy signature. And so it's like at this time when the energy is different, naturally our usual, energy signature isn't there. And
Mm.
so as you kind of start to recover and start to return to some kind of rhythm, kind of what are you telling yourself as you come back to this and forming that kind of reconnecting with the audience again? When you said that your audience understanding, how much did you communicate to your audience about what happened?
Well, I did write a recent blog post on my website about supporting ourselves through sadness, and I explained there what had happened. So I encouraged people to go and read that, and most people did, which was really lovely. And so I think that gave some background, and it was just honest. And because I didn't want people to think I had just forgotten about it or I wasn't doing this work anymore. And even though I know things aren't where they need to be, it was an explanation, I guess, of what I was personally experiencing. And it's a very real thing for people to deal with. So I think a lot of people who are working for and by themselves would understand and certainly could relate to that. In terms of what I'm telling myself at the moment, there's a lot there in that space, George. So it's about learning to show self-compassion, that it's okay if things aren't always done exactly how they need to be at a time like this, and letting go of those expectations. I'm somebody that always has things sorted, organized. I make things happen. I'm a bit of a doer in that respect. So to be in a situation where I'm sometimes finding myself very unmotivated and with very little inspiration to do anything, that's new territory for me. I'm not used to that. So I'm working my way through that as well. There have been times when I've really thrown myself into work and tasks that needed to be done. That's distracting and that works for a while, but that can soon lead to exhaustion. And I'm also finding that doing things in that way, if you're not giving yourself the time and space you need to process things, then it's very easy to become triggered by things along the way, because you that time to process things hasn't been there and you've just been going and continuing along. So that leads to burnout, and it also leads to that easy triggering. And then you're coming from a place of being very busy to being depleted. And once you're here in that space of depletion, it's very hard to find that motivation to sort of come back to that balance. So I'm working through all of those things at the moment, and self-compassion is probably the main thing that I'm learning to give myself now, and letting go of guilt when things aren't done the way that I'd like them to be right now. So there's a whole process there I'm working through, George. There's a lot of emotions there. And as I said, a lot of this is new territory for me in terms of how things are affecting the running of my business.
Yeah, wow. It's really good to hear about the needing that time to process, and when we don't, you said the triggering is easier, and burnout also is more likely. And so how how do we, I mean, when it comes to the processing and giving ourselves that spaciousness, um, how do you set aside that feeling of guilt or needing to do this, do that? I mean, especially as a doer, you're used to, keeping on top of everything.
Mm.
I mean, one example is I think we were going to do this interview maybe a little bit earlier, right? But then, of course, what you were going through, it made sense to postpone it a bit. And I thought it was perfectly fine, for example, to postpone, things like this. And I feel like people should consider doing that more often. But how else are you giving yourself that spaciousness to process and to heal?
Well, I think my understanding of what it means to be a highly sensitive person has significantly helped. And I've been a member of the sensitive empowerment community now for over 2.5 years. So I've really come to understand the needs of sensitive people, which is something I did not know or understand well too much before then. And it's once you recognize that you need to have that space and time, that alone time, it's about creating healthy boundaries and being able to communicate that with those around you. And of course, we have to realize what we need. And sometimes that's a work in progress. We don't always know what we need straight away. So I'm just allowing that to be and allowing myself to recognize what is there and what I need at the time. And then if we have to reschedule things, I'm doing that. If I have to say no to things, I'm doing that as well. And just allowing myself to do that. It's also a time, George, I've noticed with sensitive people that sometimes we like to be productive. And sometimes when that isn't happening, it takes quite a bit of commitment there to take a couple of steps backwards and say it's okay to do that. And I think sometimes sensitive people have difficulty doing that. And we also have difficulty, I think, communicating and asking others to actually step up while we need to take a step back. So these are all challenges, I think, for sensitive people in particular. And I think it's understanding that and being okay with that. And that takes time. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, that's a really good point about asking others to fill in where we used to be doing everything. And I appreciate you mentioning that and these kind of the importance of self-awareness really and self-forgiveness as we move through these kinds of times. Um, One other thing you mentioned, or you sent me in the notes that you sent is passive offerings. Okay, so
Mm.
so uh, when well, tell us about that. I mean, what do you think about sort of having more passive offerings and has that been supportive of you, or how do you see that as a strategy for dealing with personal change?
Well, I think it's incredibly important that solopreneurs, people working on their own, they diversify what their offerings are. And I thought of one-on-one coaching, and that's something at the moment I'm not offering, but I did think of coaching as a really good example of this because obviously that one-on-one time with our clients is something that we want to turn up as our best selves. And at a time like this, we're probably not going to do that. So people would have to cut back on the appointments perhaps that they have, reschedule things, and maybe they're not able to personally hold those one-on-one client sessions at all during this time. So when that happens, of course, everything else continues in the background. The expenses, the operational expenses are all there, and there has to be an income coming in. So we don't want that financial stress and burden on top of everything else. So this is where I think a passive income through either an online course, even if it's a short course, or a program that you run, or perhaps affiliate programs that you're aligned with, that your audience aligns with, those things can be working there for you in the background and providing that passive income. Now, I know those things don't just automatically, magically work on their own. Those things require some consistency and communication promotion as well. But at a time like this, if those systems are already there in place, I think they can help because they are usually bringing in something for people. So at least that stress, to some degree anyway, is taken away in terms of that earning income capacity at a time of personal change. So that's why I think diversifying is important. We're not just depending on one particular thing that we're offering to people.
Yeah, really well said, especially the one-to-one work. It's if
Mm.
that's all we do and our energy is not there at the moment, and of course we have to keep postponing a bunch of appointments, and that can be really hard on the income. I remember, I mean, I've seen this happen several times where entrepreneurs, solopreneurs over the years, when they have gone through significant change in their lives, personal, professional, Sometimes they'll do like sometimes, not only will they be transparent with their audience about what's going on, but they'll even say, if you would like to support me in this time, well, of course, some people do something like GoFundMe and having just a donation type support, and that's okay too. But some people say, hey, listen, if you want to support me, you know, I'd like to sell this course, and maybe it's at a particular discount. Like this would be a really helpful time for you to, enroll in this because it does support my business and it helps me. At the same time, you get a great deal on this thing. And so I've seen that happen several times, and I thought, yeah, why not? Why not? Because it's like it's a win-win for everybody. We want your audience clearly is there because they resonate with you. They want you to be well and successful. And so if they can support in that way, that also is a win for them. Why not? And I've also seen people pre-sell like pre-sell a couple things, pre-sell either their one-to-one services events. Like, I'm right now I'm whether it's I'm grieving or I'm healing or going through this change, and I will be available for services again in 3 months. But if you want to be supportive of at this time, you can, kind of prepay for those things. And maybe there's some kind of bonus or discount. And I've seen that. And I've also seen people pre-sell, group programs as well. It's like, oh, I'm gonna have to postpone the group program, but if you want to sign up now, I'd be grateful for that support. And we'll start in 3 months or whatever. I'll send you something to work on ahead of time or something. But yeah, it's really you know, basically like we got to remember our audience wants us to be well. They hope that we are, well taken care of. They hope we are successful because that allows us to have the best energy to serve them as well. And nobody likes to see anybody, struggling or suffering, especially if we, like somebody and respect them. And so I think it's okay to be vulnerable and to find a way to make it a win-win if possible too. Um, but speaking of wellness, I mean, we kind of come back to this the remembrance, and sometimes sensitives can forget it, which is our own wellness is really primary and is the source of all of this, our business, in our life. So talk about that a bit here. How do you keep yourself coming back to, the remembrance of that, and how do you keep well yourself?
Well, that's a work in progress at the moment, George. And I must admit that, and I said this to my mum just recently, that my own well-being, I really need to get back on track because so much has happened during this time. And there are things in my wellness and well-being routine that have gone by the wayside because of other events and things happening at the time. So I'm trying to gradually get back on track with some of those sorts of things and get into a routine where I'm having quiet time. Taking breaks is important. If I know that I'm starting to really feel as if I'm not connecting with the work that I'm doing, I'll stop that, and I will make myself have a break and say, right, Andrea, that's enough. This isn't working. It's okay to step away and go and do something else. Trying to have rest is important. And because there's so much emotion going on at the time, a lot of sensitive people find it difficult to rest and sleep. And particularly for environmentally sensitive people, sleep is so incredibly important. So that's something at the moment that I am trying to work on, getting back into more of a routine and trying to set myself up for better sleep, because that's something that has suffered, particularly over these last few months for me. And I think a lot of people experience that. The other thing I think is just trying to do one thing at a time. Instead of trying to say, oh, I need to do this, this, and this for my well-being, and it's the same with work. And there might be a whole range of wonderful things there that we can engage in, but we don't have the energy to be thinking of everything. And then our energy gets very scattered. So if we focus on one small thing at a time, like maybe, okay, I haven't been really eating all that well, and I know this. So that might be something to gradually work on. So maybe instead of getting distracted with too much, I am going to take time to sit down and have a proper breakfast because I know that's important. And it seems very, very basic, but at times when you are grieving and quite emotional, we forget to do these things. And so that when we forget these things and we're out of our routine, we really do impact the rest of our day. So even something small like that, that can set us up for a good day, is something to be proud of, and it's an achievement at this time. So, and I think we forget about that. We think of achievement as being this external thing that we're doing, but it is really very much to do with ourselves personally, and those small steps that get us to that bigger thing that we're trying to aim for. So just things like that I have been trying to do. Getting back into a routine of meditation. I haven't quite got there yet, but I know that that's very, very beneficial for me. It has been in the past. That's something I want to get back into doing. So all of these things are incorporated in my well-being, and I know how important they are. It's just a matter of actually doing them and getting back on track. If I feel I need a break, going for a walk, even if it's just down the road, there's lovely trees, I'm in nature, and I'm sort of away from things. I can just be with my thoughts, and taking time to do that. A couple of other things that come to mind. I think from a well-being perspective, it's really healthy to create those boundaries when it's needed. So if you're feeling that other people around you perhaps are being a bit demanding at this time, and maybe they're not really, but it seems that way because we're already overwhelmed. So it's one of those things where if things are starting to become a little bit overwhelming, we do really need to take that step back. So we may have to say no to certain events or happenings around us, and that's okay. And good people around us will be understanding of that. So there's some things I'm working on, George, at the moment, and I'm sure there's a million other things I could add to that list, but they're probably the main ones.
No, those are plenty, really. I mean, you mentioned really the core things. I mean, if you can have a proper meal, I agree. It's, for even if you're not going through personal change, I mean, that's a struggle for a lot of people, even just like, all right, let's eat properly, like be mindful as we eat and appreciate it and really make sure that we have that nutrition and that experience. That itself really is can change so much, like little things like this for the rest of our day, or it changes our energy, changes our mood. And yes, the movement also, you said, walking down the road, for example, such a difference it can be. Especially I think when we're processing, I do find that walking is a has a subtle but profound power for helping us process through things, so it's a really good thing you mentioned. Well, we are almost at the end of our time, and I want to make sure you had a chance to share any offer that you want to, how do people work with you, anything you want to share here.
Well, I think, George, I'd love to encourage people to take a look at the sensitive empowerment community. It's such a supportive and nurturing space. It's been a wonderful place for me to be. And just when you were talking there about going for a walk and connecting with things, I think being in a space where you can share that beauty with people, it is so nourishing to the soul. And when I have been walking and then I have shared things that I've experienced and felt while I've been doing things like that on the community. And it's been such a beautiful experience because I'll see the beauty in a sunset and I think, there's Dad. And that has been so wonderfully nourishing for me to be able to share that with the community. So if people would like to find out more about the community and would perhaps like to join, they can visit sensitivecommunity.com. And if anyone is interested in finding out more about environmental sensitivities and the day-to-day management there, I'd very much welcome people to visit expansivehappiness.com, which is my own business website.
Wonderful. I will be sure to put those links below this video. And
Thank you.
thank you so much, Andrea. Thanks for showing up today for this, for
Thank
sharing
you.
of your heart and your sensitivity. I think it was a healing experience, I believe, for some people watching this, and enc
And for
much
me,
needed encouragement. Oh, yeah, I hope so. I hope so. Thank you so much. And I wish you continued healing and continued success with your work.
thank you so much, George. It's been a pleasure being here, and I really appreciate your support over these last few months. So it's
It's been
very
an
much
honor.
appreciated.
I'm grateful that we met each other, and here's to much more. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, George.